Holy shit.
Yeah. Hello.
Hey, how you guys doing? What's up, Mama?
How are you guys? I'm exhausted. I don't know how you're doing.
Hello, exhausted. I'm Daniel.
I'm so tired. Ugh.
What's up, guys? My name is Dan. This is my beautiful wife, Rachel.
Hello.
This is Bible Talk Live, the book of John, chapter 11.
Yeah. We're going to be unpacking it, if you will.
Yes, so we read it today, actually, both of us.
Yes.
And it was interesting. I got a few things that I think God was telling me or teaching me about it, and interesting to talk about it, share it, and move on.
My notes are all over the place.
Mine are.
I'm not focused, but I
focused.
wrote a lot of things down that I think are good to share. They're just not organized.
All right.
It's not usually how I operate, however.
Anyway, so we're going to go through this book. We're going to open with prayer a little bit. We're going to talk about some verses in this book. If there's anything that sticks out to you, please comment alongside of us. Let us know what you're thinking. If something is important to you, we want to hear about it. We'll tell you what's important to us and what we think we got out of reading it. And we both have read it separately, so I don't know what she's going to say, and she doesn't know what I'm going to say. So that's kind of interesting.
Mystery.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right.
This is also the part of the day where the dog,
comes up
and demands
says,
pets.
Attention. Come talk
Please
to
pay
me.
attention to me and pet me. That's okay. I will give her attention.
Do you want to pray?
You can pray.
Okay.
Thank you.
God, thanks so much for this time. I pray that you can use us and use your word. Thank you for your word. I thank you that we can talk about it and talk to you through it. I pray that you open up our minds and our hearts to things that you have us to learn in this book, in this chapter tonight. In your son's name we pray, amen. And this is John chapter 11.
And you know that because you clicked it and it said John 11.
John chapter 11.
Yeah. Okay.
Want to read the first section?
I don't know. My dad's been here before and he's like, what chapter are we doing?
That's true.
You just clicked it. Okay. So chapter 11. I will start if you would like to, chime in later. Maybe we can go back and forth because it's kind of long. All right. Now, a man named Lazarus was sick. He was from Bethany, the village of Mary and her sister Martha. This Mary, whose brother Lazarus now lay sick, was the same one who poured perfume on the Lord and wiped his feet with her hair. So the sisters sent word to Jesus, Lord, the one you love is sick. When he heard this, Jesus said, this sickness will not end in death. No, it is for God's glory, so that God's Son may be glorified through it. Jesus loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus. Yet when he heard that Lazarus was sick, he stayed where he was 2 more days. Then he said to his disciples, let us go back to Judea. But Rabbi, they said, a short while ago the Jews tried to stone you, and yet you're going to go back there? Jesus answered, are there not 12 hours of daylight? A man who walks by day will not stumble, for he sees by this world's light. It is when he walks by night that he stumbles, for he has no light. After he said this, he went on to tell them, our friend Lazarus has fallen asleep, but I am going there to wake him up. His disciples replied, Lord, if he sleeps, he will get better. Jesus had been speaking of his death, but his disciples thought he meant natural sleep. So then he told them plainly, Lazarus is dead, and for your sake I am glad I was not there, so that you may believe. But let us go to him. Then Thomas, called Didymus, I don't know, how do you say that?
Oh, called Didymus?
Didymus said to the rest of the disciples, let us also go, that we may die with him. Sorry.
Okay. On his arrival, Jesus found that Lazarus had already been in the tomb for 4 days. Now Bethany was less than 2 miles from Jerusalem, and many Jews had come to Martha and Mary to comfort them in the loss of their brother. That's verse 19. Mm-hmm. I want to make a note of that. Remember that.
Remember 19. Okay. She's licking the bottom of my foot.
When Martha heard that Jesus was coming, she went out to meet him, but Mary stayed at home. Lord, Martha said to Jesus, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. But I know that even now, God will give you whatever you ask. Jesus said to her, your brother will rise again. Martha answered, I know he will rise again in the resurrection at the last day. Jesus said to her, I am the resurrection and the life. The one who believes in me will live, even though they die. And whoever lives by believing in me will never die. Do you believe this? Yes, Lord, she replied. I believe that you are the Messiah, the Son of God, who is to come into the world. After she said this, she went back and called her sister Mary aside. "The teacher is here," she said, "and is asking for you." When Mary heard this, she got up quickly and went to him. Now Jesus had not yet entered the village, but was still at the place where Martha had met him. When the Jews who had been with Mary in the house, comforting her, noticed how quickly she got up and went out, they followed her, supposing she was going to the tomb to mourn there. When Mary reached the place where Jesus was and saw him, she fell at his feet and said, "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died." When Jesus saw her weeping, and the Jews who had come along with her also weeping, he was deeply moved in spirit and troubled. "Where have you laid him?" he asked. "Come and see, Lord," they replied. Jesus wept. Then the Jews said, "See how he loved him." But some of them said, "Could not he who opened the eyes of the blind man have kept this man from dying?"
I can go.
Yeah.
Jesus, once more deeply moved, came to the tomb. It was a cave with a stone laid across the entrance. "Take the stone away," he said. "But Lord," said Martha, the sister of the dead man, "by this time there is a bad odor, for he has been there 4 days." Then Jesus said, "Did I not tell you that if you believed, you would see the glory of God?" So they took away the stone. Then Jesus looked up and said, "Father, I thank you that you have heard me. I knew that you always hear me, but I said this for the benefit of people standing here, that they may believe that you sent me." When he had said this, Jesus called out in a loud voice, "Lazarus, come out." The dead man came out, his hands and feet wrapped with strips of linen and a cloth around his face. Jesus said to them, "Take off the grave clothes and let him go."
Therefore, many of the Jews who had come to visit Mary and had seen what Jesus did believed in him. But some of them went to the Pharisees and told them that what Jesus had done. Then the chief priests and the Pharisees called a meeting of the Sanhedrin. "What are we accomplishing?" they asked. Here is this man performing many signs. If we let him go on like this, everyone will believe in him, and then the Romans will come and take away both our temple and our nation." Then one of them, named Caiaphas, who was the high priest that year, spoke up. "You know nothing at all. You do not realize that it is better for you that one man die for the people than that the whole nation perish." He did not say this on his own, but as high priest that year, he prophesied that Jesus would die for the Jewish nation, and not only for that nation, but also for the scattered children of God, to bring them together and make them one. So from that day on, they plotted to take his life. Therefore, Jesus no longer moved about publicly among the people of Judea. Instead, he withdrew to a region near the wilderness, to a village called Ephraim, where he stayed with his disciples. When it was almost time for the Jewish Passover, many went up from the country to Jerusalem for the ceremonial cleansing before the Passover. They kept looking for Jesus, and as they stood in the temple courts, they asked one another, "What do you think? What do you think? Isn't he coming to the festival at all?" But the chief priests and the Pharisees had given orders that anyone who found out where Jesus was should report it so that they might arrest him.
Okay. So I just wrote down a big idea statement. I don't know if you
I did
are
too.
still doing that. I said Jesus raises Lazarus from the dead and unbelievers begin to plot against him. Those were kind of like
Okay. I said Jesus raises Lazarus from the dead, and the Pharisees declare Jesus must die.
Yeah. So if we just do like a quick, we used to do something as part of our Bible study a long time ago. Not this, but in a different Bible study called Storying, which you would read through this and then kind of like tell the story of what happened. And the cool thing about that is that, like, if you meet somebody that doesn't know the story, then you could literally like say it back to them in your own words about what happened.
You don't have to memorize John 11, but you could tell the story of Lazarus.
Right. So if we were like kind of go back and like pick out the biggest things of this, I know we gave a big idea, but like, so, at the beginning, there's these women, Mary and Martha, they go and they say, our brother's sick. We want you to come help him. And he's like, all right, I'm just going to hang out for 2 more days. Right. So finally he goes there. He knows what he's going to do. Right. But he knows they're already dead. he's talking to Martha. He has this like intimate conversation with her about some pretty deep stuff, right? And she makes a statement like, if you were here, my brother wouldn't have died, right?
Spin moves over there.
Dog's in the room like going crazy. It's that time of the day where she gets the zoomies. Anyway, so then he makes what I feel like is like the biggest, another one of the I am statements. It's kind of like one of the key verses here. I am the resurrection and the life. He who believes in me will live, even though he dies, and whoever lives and believes in me will never die. Do you believe this? And she says to him, yes, Lord. I believe that you are the Christ, the Son of God, who has come into the world. So they continue to go back and forth. Then Mary comes along. She says the same thing to him, right? Lord, if you had been here, my brother wouldn't have died. And then he weeps with her, right? Then he goes, he raises Lazarus from the dead. He literally just says, like, Lazarus, come out. And he comes out of the grave. And then the bad guys are like, whoa, this isn't cool. This guy's like doing all these miraculous things, you know. They said, if we let him go on like this, everyone will believe in him, and then the Romans will come and take away our place. In your text, it said the temple, I think, and our nation, right? So they're scared of him, right? So they make this plot to kill him, right? Like, we're going to arrest him. We're going to try to get rid of this guy.
Yes, they do.
Yes. So that's how those are the big points I thought. So
okay,
I will be quiet now.
Just going through telling the story again.
Yes.
Okay.
I don't know. I feel like sometimes when you read through it, it's good to go back and kind of summarize and say the most important things because it helps you to know what it was about.
Oh, awesome.
Okay.
I've pulled out some verses that are interesting to me and some thoughts about them. I'm going to go, through the different sections of the chapter.
Yeah, go ahead. Well, if you start, and then if I have something that goes along with what you have.
What was it? Verse 4 said, there's really bold claims that Jesus is making here. So verse 4 says, when he heard this, Jesus said, this sickness will not end in death. So he just heard that Lazarus was sick. That's all he heard.
He knows everything.
Mary and he does know everything. So Mary and Martha aren't there. They just sent word somehow. So Jesus got word that this guy Lazarus, who is close to him, is sick.
Yeah.
And I guess it must have been really sick because you don't just send word when someone's a little sick, but they must have thought he might be dying. They're like, hey, tell Jesus, maybe you can make him better. So Jesus says, this sickness will not end in death. That no, it is to God's glory, so that God's Son may be glorified through it. And if you just go back one page to John chapter 10, verse 37, 38, when he's talking to the Pharisees and telling them, like, don't believe me because I'm saying that I'm the Son of God. Look at what I'm doing. Right? And it's in verse 37.
Sorry.
He says to the Pharisees, do not believe me unless I do the works of my Father. But if I do them, even though you do not believe me, believe the works, that you may know and understand that the Father is in me and I am in the Father. So, he makes this bold claim to them. And then the very next chapter, he's doing arguably one of the more amazing things, right? So he's turned water into wine. He's healed the blind man. He's done some other healings. Now he's raising someone from the dead. This is kind of a big deal, I think.
Kind of a big deal.
And he, foretold it himself. He said, this is what I'm going to do.
Right.
And that was in verse 4. So that was just interesting.
Yeah. And I believe that this is the last miracle that he performs in John, I think.
Yeah, it might be, because he's about to go into Hell Week. I don't know why I just said Hell Week. I've been listening to David Goggins talk about in his audiobook, and he's a Navy SEAL, and he's gone through Hell Week a couple times, and so I just kind of
for training.
They call it Hell Week. All the SEALs go through it. You basically almost die.
Yeah. And
like they lose 3/4 of the class through Hell Week.
Yeah.
But anyway, so Jesus is about to go through the last week of his life, which is not fun for him. Okay, and then you kind of exaggerated this, the 2-day waiting period. So in verse 6, Jesus says, he finds out this information and he decides to
2 days
sit down.
Why are you gonna wait for 2 days?
I wrote a couple reasons why I thought you might have waited.
I have a couple reasons too, but go on.
Well, give me your first one.
Well, because of what you just said, right? So again, why is he performing these miracles?
Why do you think he waited for 2 days?
Why do you think? Why is he performing these miracles? Because by performing those miracles, he's showing them that, he is the resurrection, the way, the truth, the light, the bread of life. He's showing them all these things, right? He's performing these miracles so that they can have faith in him, right? So it literally says here, why is he? No, it's for God's glory, right? I think that's why he's sitting for 2 more days, because he wanted to really show God's glory. What do you think?
Yes. I'm reminded, I didn't write this down, but I'm reminded of the passage where they drop the paralyzed guy through the roof.
Oh, yeah.
They tear the roof apart, you know, and Jesus says, your sins are forgiven. Mm-hmm. And then the Pharisees are like, you can't do that. And then Jesus says to them, well, what's harder to do? Mm-hmm. To forgive sins or to tell this guy to get up and walk away? Right. And they're like, well, obviously it's harder to tell him to get up and walk away. So then he just tells him to get up and walk away, right? So, you know, healing Lazarus from the sickness, kind of easy. Maybe he just would have got better on his own, right? Mm-hmm. But raising him from the dead, okay, well, that's a little harder to do. Mm-hmm.
Well, I wrote this down also when I was studying. So apparently it was in tradition back then. The rabbis believed, or their tradition was that when someone died, the spirit of that person would hover over their body for 3 days. And then after that, it would depart them. So like, if we go back to the text here, when does he raise him from the dead?
4 days after
on the 4th day. Okay. So anyone at this time would have been like, this guy is done, right? His spirit is gone. It's done, right? There's no saving this guy. You know, maybe if it would have been like the 1st or 2nd, maybe the 3rd day, because his spirit would have still been there according to them. But the 4th day, like they would have all known, like this guy, he's not coming back, right? I thought that was cool.
No, that's true. I didn't know that 3-day spirit thing. Yeah. Where'd you hear that?
I read it in one of the studies that I did before. Yeah, actually, it was in 2 different places.
So if you can find that and read it, that'd be great. The other one that I thought of is maybe Jesus, and I thought he was doing this a couple chapters ago with the Feast of the Tabernacles. Why he delayed himself going there? I think he delayed himself also, or maybe to gather more people. Because people aren't going to go visit Lazarus if he's sick, but people are going to go if he's dead. And like a funeral, right? So if you look at verse 19, which is why I wanted to remember that. Verse 19, it says, starting 18. Now Bethany was less than 2 miles from Jerusalem, in verse 19. And many Jews had come to Martha and Mary to comfort them in the loss of their brother. So Jesus is like, by delaying, Jesus is also building up an audience.
Yeah.
If you look at verse 31, it says, when the Jews who had been with Mary in her house, comforting her, noticed how quickly she got up and went out, they followed her, supposing she was going out to the tomb to mourn there, right? Mm-hmm. To going to the place where Lazarus was going to be raised. And then 45 says, this is after he raised him from the dead. Therefore, many of the Jews who had come to visit Mary and had seen what Jesus did believed in him. So that's another reason why he might have waited 2 days, is to build up an audience there.
Yeah. So this says here, this is in the study by Lisa Churkhurst. It's called Finding I Am, where they go through the I Am statements in John. And she says, in that day, tradition said that the spirit of the person who died hovered over the body for 3 days and then departed. And there's a footnote here in her notes and her references, which goes to, there's a commentary called the Broadman Bible Commentary, and that's where the reference came from. So it's from a commentary.
Okay. And then basically the reason is because God's timing is perfect. And so in verse 14 and 15, it says, so then he told them plainly, Lazarus is dead, and for your sake I am glad I was not there, so that you may believe, but let us go to him.
Yeah.
Okay. And then anything else?
Not about that.
All right. So verse 9 through 10 is the next.
You're so organized today. I love it.
I actually was kind of confused about this. We're talking about the 12 hours.
Okay.
Right? So verse 9 and 10, Jesus answered, are there not 12 hours
this part
of daylight? Anyone who walks in the daytime will not stumble, for they are in this world, for they see by this world's light. It is when a person walks at night that they stumble, for they have no light. Okay, well, that kind of makes sense, right? You can see in the daylight, so you don't stumble. And you know what Jesus is referencing here is that I am the light, and I am with you. Right. So now we can see.
Right.
But I'm preparing you for a time when I will not be here. Well, no, not that I'm preparing you for a time, but just so you know, there's going to be a time when I'm not here. basically saying, don't squander the time. There's only 12 hours of daylight. Right, so I'm going to read this note here, and then it says it really good here in this commentary. So Jesus uses the images of day and night. I think that was what I was going to say. Yeah, he's creating a sense of urgency.
This is coming from the footnote in your new Bible.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then I'm going to read it in the commentary or something else. So Jesus uses the image of day and night to describe the course of his ministry. The 12 hours of daylight represent the light Jesus had yet to give. The night represents the time when Jesus, the light of the world, would be taken away, when the disciples, when what the disciples feared would happen in Judea would indeed take place. And then,
please don't put that on.
No, I'm gonna hold this.
I'm so
one.
nervous. This desk is gonna break.
Here we go. This one says that Jesus does not respond at once, the 2 days. In no way disparages his love for the family. There are problems with a return to the mountains of Judea, which the apostolic party fully realizes. Threats of death have been known for over a year, and some have even tried to kill Jesus already. But the Lord feels the pressing need to depart. His time is short, and just as with the hours of daylight for the traveler, each hour must be used to maximum benefit. The spiritual light now present is even more valuable than this. Jesus is the light of the world, and while he is present and able to dispel darkness, his work must progress. The task at hand is the revival of Lazarus, who is now dead. A paradoxical exchange is thus at hand. Jesus chooses to risk death in Judea in order to save a man from death. He indeed is the good shepherd who is willing to lay down his life for the life of his sheep. Basically, the analogy of don't burn daylight. Right?
Sorry, I'm just laughing because of the shirt that you're wearing right now. There's like holes in your armpit.
This is a 20-year-old shirt. Okay. So that was interesting, and I didn't really understand what that meant until I did some reading about it.
It makes sense, right?
Yeah.
You gotta make the most of
the most of it. Yeah, and Jesus is that too. It's like, all right, I got to go now.
Yep.
Okay, and then I jump all the way to verse 35. That's my next thing.
Hold on, you're gonna skip over verses 25 and 26.
Let's see here. Maybe I shouldn't. You know what? You did make a comment about that, and I did not. And I made no notes about verse 25 and 26. So let's hear what you have to say about verse 25 and 26.
It's another I am statement, right? He says so. So first of all, I feel like in all these other stories and like all these miracles he's performing, right? Like you said, he wanted more people to gather, but like right now, when in verse 25, when he says, I am the resurrection and the life, like who's he talking to?
He's talking to Martha.
He's literally just talking to Martha, right? So he's giving her this like all the other I am statements, like
are to the Jews or to
they're
the
in front
crowds.
of a bunch of people, right?
Okay.
So like I feel like I'm constantly asking myself when I read, like, what is this telling me about Jesus's character? So like the fact that he's having this intimate conversation with her and then goes on to have another intimate conversation with Mary, what does it tell you about someone if he's willing to give her that one-on-one time?
They're an important person.
Say that again?
They're important.
They're important to him, right? So he cares about them. He loves them. And he asks her like a super important question, right? I am the resurrection and the life, right? Like he who believes in me will live even though he dies, right? She's probably wondering like, what does that mean? And whoever lives and believes in me will never die. Do you believe this? And like literally without a flinch, she says, yes, Lord, I believe that you are the Christ, the Son of God who has come into the world, right? Then he moves on to Mary, right? So again, we have another I am statement where I just think it's beautiful. That's all.
All right.
I mean, I don't have a lot of notes about it, but I just think it's really cool that he's having this conversation with just her and making this bold statement when before he was talking to like groups of people,
Yeah, this is I'm the resurrection and the life. Mm-hmm. He only says this one time.
Right.
So he only calls himself the resurrection in the story that he, resurrects
just
somebody.
Yep.
Which is interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Then I go to 35, which is probably the shortest verse in the Bible.
Mm-hmm. Oh, wait. Sorry.
You got more?
Well, kind of, yes. And kind of know about that one. Well, I guess what I'm saying kind of comes before. Yes, I do have more to say.
All right, let's hear it.
So, like, it led me into this questioning of, okay, why is he there? Well, Lazarus was sick. They were like, and both of them, and she had even said to him, like, if you were here, my brother wouldn't have died, right? She knows that he can perform these miracles and do anything, but like, she's now accepted the fact that Lazarus is dead.
Yeah, she has no expectation of a resurrection happening.
She doesn't think that he's gonna like be resurrected, and he literally then still comes to her. Like, first, you know, obviously she's upset, saying like, if you would have been here, my brother wouldn't have died. But like, he's even asking her like, do you believe me? And she's still saying yes, even though he wasn't there. According, you know, to her, if he would have been there, he wouldn't have died. So it's like she's still believing him, even though this awful thing has just happened to her. Right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, you're looking at me like I'm crazy.
trying to. You're saying that.
Are you following my
No, I'm a little
train of thought
confused.
here?
I think you were saying that he was supposed to. Not, was he late or something?
No. My point of saying, like, she's just had this terrible, awful thing happen to her.
She lost her brother.
And he's like, do you believe in me? And she's like, just before that, she's thinking, like, if you wouldn't have been here, my brother wouldn't have died. And he's like, well, do you believe in me? Like, do you believe, like, do you believe in these miracles I perform? Like,
yes,
are you
she does, because she knows, she said that he would have.
She believes in him, even though he didn't save her brother.
Right. Okay. Right.
Like, are we going to still believe in God? Like, even if.
Okay,
even
the thing that she wanted.
Right.
Okay, I gotcha. Yes, she sent a message to Jesus hoping he would come in time, and he didn't.
So, my question.
In her time, what she thought was the right time.
Right, my question is, like, are you going to believe and have faith, even if he doesn't answer your prayer? Even if you're sick? Even if you get in a horrible accident? Even if you're hurting? Even if things don't go your way? Even when bad things happen? Like, are you still going to believe like she did? That's all.
Good.
Do you understand where I'm going with this? Yep. Okay. So that's all I have to say about that. I just wrote down, will you trust that he knows best even if you don't? Hopefully the answer to that is yes.
Yeah, because she was expecting one thing and she's...
Exactly.
She didn't get what she did not get what she was expecting.
Mm-hmm.
She got far more.
Right.
And we're going to...
But at that moment in time, she didn't know that.
She didn't know that.
Right.
No. Okay.
I'm done.
Verse 35 is Jesus wept. And, you know, what's interesting about that is that...
It's the shortest verse in the Bible.
is that Jesus had emotions, right? He was human. He had, he was angry. You know, he dealt with all the same things that we deal with.
Well, he wasn't angry here when he was crying.
No, but in his life.
I'm just saying.
Right, and it's okay to acknowledge the way that we feel. I'm actually, this is where I got from Sunday school class where my buddy's teaching. You know, he started out it's a class on doubt and depression and stuff. Mm-hmm. And he wrote up on the board. He goes, I shouldn't feel this way, or you shouldn't feel this way.
Right, because sometimes Christians feel like, oh, I shouldn't be anxious, or I shouldn't be whatever. Right.
But you do feel that way. Mm-hmm. And so he crossed off shouldn't and put in do. Mm-hmm. I do feel this way. I do feel like this, right? Mm-hmm. So if it's okay to acknowledge if you actually do feel a certain way, mm-hmm. you know, whether it's even if it's a sin, right? If I feel like I want to do this sin thing, I want to act this way that's not right. You know, even though you can say I shouldn't, which is true, but you can say that I do and I am, because that's also true as well. And that's the only way that I'm gonna be able to deal with emotions that I'm having a hard time with and want to change is if I acknowledge that I have them and maybe figure out why, right? Mm-hmm. So that was interesting. Yes.
Do you have anything else about him weeping?
No. Go for it.
So, again, going back to my question that I always ask is like, well, what does this tell us about his character? Right? You answered that question that I wrote down that he's caring and he's empathetic, right? Mm-hmm. So, like, why is he crying? That's my question for you. Like, why is he crying?
Well, Jesus loved everybody, right?
Right.
But I think he was really close to Mary, Martha, and mm-hmm. Lazarus.
But is he crying because Lazarus died? I don't think so.
He's crying because his friends are sad.
Yeah. he literally, it says when Jesus saw her weeping. So, I mean, I don't know about you, but like if I see someone crying, like it makes me want to cry because I feel sad for them and with them, right? And so he's feeling that with them. So I wrote down that tells us that he's caring, he's empathetic. And I wrote down the question like, Jesus knew he was going to raise Lazarus. So like, why is he weeping with her? Right.
Yeah. He can't show up on the script. Like,
Right.
we're going to be
He
okay.
knows, he knows, and he
somber moment.
hasn't told her, but like, he's still in this moment with her, even though he literally could just tell her like, you know, it's going to be okay. But instead he just cries with her. Right. And I think sometimes when things happen, sad things happen, especially if like, you know, someone that's lost a loved one, there's never the right words to say, right? Like you can tell that person you're sorry, you can, you know, whatever it is, there's never the right words to say at that time. But I think just being with someone and crying with them when they lose someone is a way to show them that you care about them. So that's all.
Yeah. When Job's buddies came, they sat with him and said nothing for 7 days.
Yeah. Just be with the person.
Yeah, when Job was suffering.
I don't know all the right answers, but I definitely try to say less than anything because I worry in those situations that like I will say the wrong thing. So just being there and not saying anything is okay.
Yeah, those guys, once they started talking, it was not very helpful for Job.
No.
Okay, verse 37. Let's see, read that. Some of them said, Could not he who opened the eyes of the blind?
For a verse.
Verse 37. But some of them said, Could not he who opened the eyes of the blind man have kept this man from dying? So my comment here is that they had no idea that Jesus was going to raise this guy from the dead.
Wait, what verse did you say?
37. They're still comparing this to Jesus healing the blind man. That Jesus can heal. Okay. That Jesus can heal health maladies and make people better.
Right.
But you can't stop it from dying. You know, from their perspective, okay, Lazarus is now dead.
Right. Just like in verse 32 when she says it, and verse 21 when she says the same thing, like if you would have been here, my brother wouldn't have died.
And then at the end of verse 44, my verse says he takes off his grave clothes. I went to look at some other verses. This is the NIV is the only one that says grave clothes.
What verse?
The last part of
take
40.
Off. Yeah, it says take off the grave clothes and let him go.
Unbind him. Take off the cloth. I've read several other verses, but the only one that said grave clothes was NIV. I kind of like laughed at that for a second. I'm trying to think of the environment here because after this we're going to go into the plot to kill Jesus. This is the end of Lazarus being raised from the dead. I'm trying to imagine you walk into a funeral, you walk into where someone's dead, everybody's sad and miserable.
And she's right. Like it must have smelled really bad.
Maybe it did.
Like,
maybe it didn't.
Right. She comments like, by this time there's going to be a bad odor. Like he's been laying there for 4 days.
So like, imagine like, I'm just trying to think if I was Lazarus to come out.
Yeah.
Like he was dead. He might have known he was consciously dying when he was sick. I don't know how sick he was. Maybe he was unconscious, maybe not. But he comes out and he's got cloths on his hands and his face, and he hears Jesus, his buddy, who he loves, say, take off the grave clothes. On my mind, I'm thinking the only time I would ever hear the words grave clothes would be, the end of your life. So for him to hear him take off the grave clothes, it must be like, whoa, so I'm not dead? Like, that's crazy. And then, how could I go from crying because I lost somebody special to that person getting up and walking?
Yeah, imagine like your
the emotional roller coaster would just be off the charts.
Yeah. In the NLT it says, and the dead man came out, his hands and feet bound in grave clothes, his face wrapped in a headcloth. Jesus told them, unwrap him and let him go.
Yeah. Can you look up Luke 16:13? Yes. So now we're going to go talk a little bit about the plot to kill Jesus at the end. So we've got, let's see, in verse 48 here. This is so the Pharisees are talking. They're having their Sanhedrin, which is the powwow. Mm-hmm. And he says, if we let him go on like this, everyone will believe him, and then the Romans will come and take away our temple and our nation. It reminded me of this verse that Rachel's about to read.
16:13.
13,
No
yeah.
servant can serve two masters.
Yeah.
Either he will hate the one and love the other, or he will be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve both God and money.
So money would be Caesar and Rome in this scenario. And so these guys are claiming to love God and serve God, but they're given the Son of God and proven by his works, and they're choosing money over him. They're choosing the nation over God, because you can't serve them both, right? So these guys have been loyally serving Caesar, right? Doing his bidding. I mean, in fact, Caiaphas was named the high priest because the Romans allowed it, right? Like so. I wrote whose temple and whose nation is it? Right? Is it their temple and is it their nation? No, it's not. It's God's temple and it's God's nation, and they're treating it like it's theirs.
Well, they felt threatened.
They felt threatened.
Yeah.
And this note here, it says here, Caiaphas the high priest, he was the son-in-law of Annas, who had been deposed from the high priesthood by the Romans in 15 AD. So Caiaphas he sees the writing on the wall. Like he's seen his predecessor get taken off for not towing the line. So he knows what he has to do. He can't let this Son of God actually fulfill his destiny, because it's going to destroy his standing in the church, and it's going to destroy with the nation and everything. And then, and here there's more to read about that. Here. So the deliberate. Stop laughing at me. Or you can laugh at me. I don't care. The deliberations of the Sanhedrin, now called to a formal meeting about Jesus, typify the drift of the Jewish leadership's reaction to Christ since chapter 9. Jesus's signs seem compelling, but the practical implications of this are more than they can bear. What if the masses start to follow him? Would it not upset the fragile political equilibrium with Rome? Would Caesar tolerate a Messiah? The Sanhedrin must choose either to follow the logic of Jesus' truth, regardless of the cost, or to retreat into the safety of their own nicely controlled religion. So, and Caiaphas chooses the latter. I put him down. He's like the Judas. Like Judas, Caiaphas is doing God's will. So in 49 through 51 or 52, I was confused because in 51 he talks about what Caiaphas said as a prophecy. I'm going to quote Caiaphas here, starting in verse 49. Then one of them, named Caiaphas, who was a high priest that year, spoke up. You know nothing at all. You do not realize that it is better for you, talking to the other Pharisees, it is better for you that one man die for the people than that the whole nation perish. So there's some wisdom in that statement, right? Because Caiaphas is saying that with one motive, but God's using that for a completely different motive, right? So he just said that Jesus is going to die for the people as opposed to the whole nation dying. That's what Caiaphas said. He says better that way. And then this is John writing. He said he did not say this on his own, right? God's got everything going under his control. But as high priest that year, he prophesied. So he's basically prophesying here God's will, that Jesus would die for the Jewish nation. And not only for that nation, but also for the scattered children of God, to bring them together and make them one. So Caiaphas is like, I'm going to kill Jesus because I want to maintain control over the temple and the religion. But in reality, Caiaphas is going to successfully kill Jesus, but it's going to be for God's glory, not for Caiaphas' glory. And then Jesus goes back in the underground again, in verse 54. Because
Dips out.
the time is not yet right for him. He'll show back up when he's ready. Because they even say, where's Jesus? Because the Passover's coming. And he's like, sorry, guys, I'm out.
Yeah.
I'll be back when I'm supposed to be back.
I only have one other thing to say.
Yes?
Okay. So, the verse 43, when he's like literally, he goes and says, Lazarus, come out. Dude just comes walking out,
He was
right?
walking out.
So
Like he woke him up.
this
I was sleeping.
this made me think back to, like, literally he just speaks it into being and it just happens, right? So again, I'm asking the question, like, what does this tell me about God's character? It tells me that he is super powerful, right? So this made me think back to just in the very beginning.
Where are you
Like,
at? Genesis?
Yeah, like literally Creole.
Genesis what?
In the first chapter, right? He said, "Let there be light." He just literally said it and like spoke it into being, and it just happened, right?
Oh,
Like,
wake up.
let there be this, let there be that. Like he literally just like says it,
Wake up.
boom, it happens. So I feel
Or
like
come out.
this also shows me power and glory. And that is all I have to say about anything.
Not anything, huh?
About anything
You're done
else.
talking now.
I'm
Rachel's
done.
no more talking. All right. Well, cool. Well, that was fun. I appreciate you joining us, Mom, and anybody else who watches this.
Do you have anything you want to say? Because we've been talking for 40 minutes. I'm about done talking. Because you were so organized. I am a little sad. So Daniel got this new Bible. It's like,
are you Bible jealous?
No, I'm not jealous of the new Bible. I'm a little sad because it's like it's an NIV, but it's like not the NIV. Like there's two different NIVs, and I have like
the right one.
No, but it's not the same as mine. So when you're reading, like not everything is the exact same. So you know, I feel a little bit sad about that, but it's all right. It does have sparkly pages on the side, so that's kind of cool. Anyway,
he did set it all.
I think we said it all.
We said it all. We got
talking.
everything. Okay. Next time we read John 11, we'll get all new things.
We'll be quiet. All right. Well, we hope you learned something new. I know I learned some new things when I was studying today, so I hope you guys learned something new too.
And if you don't know who Jesus is, you should know a little more now. And if you have any questions, let us know in the comment section. And we're going to be reading John 12 next week. So follow along. Yeah. All right. Yes, we'll pray and then we'll say goodnight. Now, thanks for this night. Thank you for this time with the folks. Thanks for my mom to get to be here. It's good to talk to her. Anybody else that wants to listen, I hope that you get something out of this message. I pray that God speaks to you and He moves your heart to grow closer to Him, to trust in Him, and to let Him forgive you for the sins that you've created and you've done, and to accept His gift of eternal life. It's in your Son's name we pray. Amen.
Amen. All right. Good night and sweet dreams to you too. Yes, it is bedtime. See y'all next week.
Good night.
Bye.
Bye-bye.